Thank you for agreeing to speak with us today. I'll go ahead and do the formal introduction so we have that for the beginning of the recording, and then we'll jump into talking about the National Western Center. I'm Rachel Storm. I'm here today with Tykus Holloway. Today is September 24th, 2021. Could you start off by introducing yourself in the framework of your role with the National Western Center, how you got involved in the project, and so forth?
Absolutely. Good morning. Again, Tykus Holloway, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center. And I lead a group of folks who are helping oversee the strategic planning, generations, and construction efforts for the redevelopment of the 250-acre campus.
Great, thank you. And so to start off, can we talk about your relationship to the National Western Center complex, kind of how you got, when you got involved in the project and what you've done since you've been involved and so forth?
Absolutely, and I'll probably ramble on.
It's okay.
My connection comes in both professional and personal. And you know, the more I reflect on even that question, even in general, the more I recall just some connection that I have to either the campus directly or the we're doing on the campus or planning in the future. And so on the professional side, for the past 2 years, I've been in this role leading the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center, putting together a lot of the bricks and mortar, developing the kind of table, if you will, for the future development of the campus. Prior to that, I've worked for the city for approximately 10 years. And I've always been passionate about public service and wanting to improve physical and economic and social conditions for those in our underserved communities within Denver, but also just to enhance the quality of life for all of Denver. And I think it's very relevant to what we're doing here on the campus. Like Mayor Hancock, you know, finding ways to support the Denver community's upward mobility, competitiveness comes from my upbringing here in Denver. And what we're doing on this campus is very much relevant and related. And so again, for me, I'm going to keep going on this ramble, but as part of this, my team has been establishing small business opportunities, but also individual work employment opportunities here on the campus, which is very meaningful for me, and particularly for those in the Global area Swansea neighborhoods, and being part of the campus development. And so as we're moving forward in the construction, we also are making it, you know, very clear and folks aware of the opportunities we have on the campus and providing training for individuals who want to enter into construction or a career opportunity, which I, again, feel like that really ties back into who I am and why it's been amazing to be in this role and part of the campus. So personally, I'm from Denver, a Denver native, and grew up in Montbello. So it's an area in Northeast Denver, considered one of Denver's under-resourced communities. And it, you know, similar to those in GES or Global area Swansea, a lot of the situations and having similarities regarding not only, you know, being a diverse and having strong sense of culture and pride, but also having feelings of despair or abandonment, or just feelings that you have limited opportunities to succeed in life. I share a lot of those same things while being from another neighborhood here in Denver. But my first memorable experience and connection to the campus is coming full circle and kind of strange, but powerful in many ways. So my parents, who still live in Montbello, live on Billings Street. And so my friends and I, who were considered at-risk youth, used to often see a horse trailer that was parked down the block. And we would make jokes of like, who in the hood would have a horse trailer? Like, what are they doing? We had no real direct connection, especially in the neighborhood, with anything that had to do with livestock or horse in the inner city, if you will. We'll come to find out the home and the trailer was owned by the great and late Lou Fasson, who was the founder of the Bill Pickett Rodeo, and now called MLK Junior Rodeo, and is, you know, obviously held here in Denver, but across the nation. And so we didn't know that until a school field trip where our school, and I think it was elementary or middle school, took us to the rodeo, and was our first entree into understanding that that's who this was. And so obviously at that point we were very impressed on many different levels. Still didn't quite understand it, but, you know, seeing them share the stories of African-American cowboy and cowgirls and instilling a sense of pride was very meaningful. And so, you know, that comes full circle for me. it, 2 years ago, had the privilege of actually meeting up with his wife, Miss Valeria Howard Vassan, who carries on his legacy here in Denver, across the country, and also had a chance to introduce her and her team to my staff in one of our staff meetings. So it was surreal for me, and I think for her as well, knowing that we were the little kids that were up the block, just maybe 3 or 4 houses away from where she lived at one point. And just further, as I kept thinking about my connections to this campus and what we're doing. So on the agricultural and rural side, I spent a lot of time as a kid on the Eastern Plains and near Nebraska. So kind of up the I-76 corridor. I've probably been in a vehicle for thousands of miles. My dad was the avid fisherman and fished, anywhere from, Wiggins to Fort Morgan to Sterling to Julesburg, all the way to Lake McConaughey. And so had a lot of interactions in those rural areas and farm towns. Needless to say, I didn't make a connection to the stock show until today, and even the campus and what's going on. But my father's African American, so if you can envision, you have an African American guy and this little kid with poofy curly hair, going into stores and asking, rural folks and farmers, where to catch the fish, where are they biting? And even my dad was not afraid to go into just about any place and ask questions and just talk to people as humans. And I can remember him asking farmers to buy produce out of their fields, and we would go pick them. And I have loaded hundreds of watermelons into a back of a truck to be sold back here in Denver, try to get my cut of the labor of loading all these watermelons. So I've had a lot of good times and interesting in the Eastern Plains and rural and ag lands, tied back again to what we're doing here on this campus. Then my dad also worked in the meat packing plants, in the area that was related to the stockyards, kind of odd. On the sports side, so grew up, my sister played competitive basketball and often played at the Coliseum. That's where a lot of the DPS state finals were and things of that nature a couple of decades ago. So had a lot of experience in the Coliseum, but not necessarily outside of the Bill Pickett rodeos, what I knew it as. I didn't really go there for anything else but sports. And of course, more recently, tying it back to the day, I've gone to the stock show and the rodeos, the pro rodeo, the MLK Junior Rodeo, the Mexican Rodeo. So I have 2 little kids, and they enjoy going to anytime the Marvel Avengers are there, something, and anytime it has to do with a dinosaur, of course. Yes, we're there. And then lastly, and I'll stop rambling here on this, but on the education side, so have a civil engineering degree from Carl State University. So obviously CSU on the campus, great to see that and a lot of the research that they're doing. But it also is, interestingly for me, a place where, coming out of Montbello, inner city, socioeconomic conditions that a lot of my suburban peers did not experience, and got to CSU and would have some interesting conversations. And there's quite a few kids who are from rural areas or ag lands that are going to CSU for the programs that are there, and would have some again very interesting conversations about our different experiences. Mm-hmm. While they were very different in some areas, having grown up in a neighborhood where gangs and violence was prevalent, when we talked about economic outcomes, shortage of food or economics, the rural kids would have the same story. And so it was just, again, not having that same experience outside of the I-76 corridor. Didn't know some of the folks that are from the rural areas was just fascinating and interesting to understand. We shared some of the same things and outcomes and desires in life. And so again, mine is kind of rambling, but really a full circle of connectivity to what we're doing on the campus.
Well, thank you so much. And what you call rambling is just what I call oral history. So I spent 5 hours yesterday with a woman who started a theater company in East Denver. So she's 94 years old, and she took us out for soul food in Aurora, and we just sat and listened to her talk for a really long time and just really enjoy her. So the rambling is what we call oral history, and hearing you make those connections about things that you're like thinking back to, like, what are your connections to this is really meaningful to be able to hear, your stories about growing up and those connections that you don't necessarily think about until someone asks you to think about them at some point. So those are, I love those kind of stories. So the next question is about the redevelopment. So why is the redevelopment of the National Western Center important to you? And you can address that however that question comes across to you.
Sure. And for me, it goes, again, personal and professional. You know, at the National Western Center, obviously we're creating a new home for the stock show, new facilities there, but also that year-round global destination for food and ag and innovation and heritage and culture. Again, some of the same things that, you know, was able to experience as a kid or just coming out of Montbello, have some of those strong senses of pride and culture and wanting to make sure that we're instilling some of those artifacts or things in the redevelopment here and involving the community. You know, the bricks and mortar is one thing, but it's so much more than that. And so again, just being passionate about seeing people get career opportunities, whether it's during construction or long-term, and working with the National Western Center Authority on ideas and concepts and agreements with community to be able to provide those spaces for the community to thrive or sell goods and services that, you know, are reminiscent or directly associated with culture and the pride that's there. Creating those small business opportunities. We have programs that we utilize during the construction that help support individual workers, but also small women and minority-owned businesses. But also we're seeing in this campus, bridging the rural and urban divide. And so it's cliche-ish, I think, sometimes when people say that, you hear it even at the national level, but as a kid, seeing it, and then understanding, like, that's when people say that, that's what we're talking about here. And while, you know, politically there may be always a divide or maybe not, who knows, but when you get down to the basics of people being human, this campus is going to be trying to figure out how to bring farm food to the table, researching livestock and animal health and the critical need of how to preserve water, and also support, you know, the need for food, right? Because it's a full life cycle that's there. So knowing that that's what we're doing on the campus, we're building the infrastructure to enable these activities. For me, is personal, is critical that we do these things, and, you know, we're going to make history here and be part of it.
Fantastic, thank you. So would you talk a little bit about what the development of this area, the redevelopment of this area, is going to mean to the various stakeholders, to the local neighborhoods, Globeville area, Swansea, to Denver, bigger Denver, and then also to Colorado? What's it going to do at those various levels?
Absolutely, and starting at the local level, because I think that's obviously where you have to start in the key. The vision that the Mayor Hancock had for this campus was also obviously to keep the stock show here, but in doing so to make sure that the communities have a chance to take advantage of these unprecedented investments in infrastructure. And so what does it mean to the local community? First and foremost, as we're reconstructing the site, we're not only fulfilling the vision and the mission of the master plan, but opening up 6 acres of new open space. And so in an area, and again, coming out of a neighborhood where our closest true open space was, for the longest time, east of Montbello was fields and open space, and north was the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which was a former EPA Superfund site. Knowing that folks here need more space to get out, stretch their legs, be able to have access to mobility options. We're opening up the river, we're providing new bridges, and then providing training to those who want to be part of the construction careers. And then further, once we get it done, knowing that long-term investment and opportunity for small businesses, for community members to be part of this campus long-term, have a cleaner environment to be able to get out and have access to, have spaces that they can rent, do festivals, activities, performances, birthdays, whatever it may be. You now have a focal point where the community can rally around. Moving up a little bit, of course, so the stock show and being able to have, continue another 100 years of activities for them. It's unique in many ways. I think a lot of folks think of the stock show in kind of one area, one domain of people, but realizing that, the Mexican rodeo and the history of Mexican Americans and Native Americans with in the Western U.S., African Americans, from Deerfield, all the way to Denver, to other parts of Colorado, where Lincoln Hills, knowing that there was a lot of ag and environmental things going on for all cultures, even Asian Americans, right? And so knowing that this center will have activities that are programmed for all walks of life, from stock showing on is a, for me is really critical and really is important. And just kind of speaks to Denver's history. I mean, we're, a diverse community, and helping, continue to provide that legacy and continue on, and enliven ourselves at the same time. And then, of course, just that research around some of the global challenges that we all face with sustainability and scarcity of resources, to water, to livestock and animal health. And so the redevelopment to me is just, it's a part of Denver's fabric and history. We're maintaining it and enriching and building upon it. So critical, I think, to Denver and our history economically, socially, politically.
Thank you. So this question is it seems like an easy question, but it's not really an easy question, but I ask all of my oral history folks this, because not just for the National Western Center project, but everybody. But if you were to take a single photo of you or your relationship to the National Western Center, past, present, or future, what would that photo be and why?
Sure. Before I describe it, I want to give a little bit of a visual, I think, because you're right, you could take this in many different ways and with it. But, again, for me, coming out of a neighborhood, strong sense of pride, dignity, diversity, very similar in GS. When you talk to folks there, you get the same general sense and vibe. So my father's African-American, my mother's white, my wife's Native American and Mexican American. And so we have little kids who both have red hair, but it's a topic probably for another day, another question. But, seeing, I think, from a bird's eye view, an image of multicultural diversity, range of people taking advantage of the opportunities on the campus. In this picture, I could see people along the riverfront in the open space, having a good time, seeing small business and vendors growing into large vendors and institutions, but selling goods and services on the campus, whether it's out in the yards as a green market open space to indoors, the performance activities, carrying on those activities of kids being able to see the Marvel Avengers, or other performances, in the future facilities and spaces. And so really seeing the whole gamut, the full spectrum of people just taking advantage of the emerging opportunities, having a good time, and being together, as a diverse and inclusive community.
That's great. Thank you. You tell the story and I can see that in my head. That's wonderful. I love it. So I know that the campus is going to be opening in the buildings will be opening in phases. So there's not going to be like a single grand opening of, everything's open all at once. And I know that as these things open, you'll have all sorts of official duties that you'll have to attend to. You'll be talking in different places and people want to hear your opinions on different things. But once all of that's kind of done, what are you going to do? What do you want to do first? What do you want to experience first on the campus?
I think, this year, since the sock show was postponed, there is being able to, so one side of the tracks will have a series of facilities built in kind of a good initial part of the phase, and being able to go to a couple of those auctions in the new facilities, which knowing that that's where it started. That's really the base of the campus is the auctions, the stockyards, and start. And so being able to go there, this January and actually experience that and see it firsthand would be really cool. Longer term, again, whether it's kind of tied between that open space riverfront area and some performance that's happening in a future phase like the arena. My kids are there, having a good time watching, again, whether it's the vendors or, monster trucks or something, and just seeing other people being, part of those activities that are from all across the metro area, if not Colorado.
That's wonderful. So that's the end of my formal questions. So now I want to just check in with you. Are there things that you'd like to talk to us about or share with us that we haven't touched on?
Let's see. Uh, I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of just in our story and like how we're relating back to the campus and why it's so important. The importance of the activities and the research that's happening on campus, and just knowing that globally, whether it's on the climate front or food and water, that there's very much we focused in on the local, but it's really this local to global, and knowing if anything we can do here locally influences the globe. For me, just having that message out there that a lot of the things we're doing here are bigger than us. I don't want us to, forget, and we definitely every day have conversations about the local community and, how do we better integrate? How do we continue? How do we make sure that there's opportunities for them? But knowing, after that we have a chance to make history and help influence the globe, and not only just, Colorado, but the country, but first and second world nations that are really struggling with food and water. We have food deserts here, and GES is one of them. And as we solve those things, knowing that we have solutions that we can now transplant across the globe, it reminds me of, we had part of the U.S. Economic Development Administration out with several representatives from Central South America, the Caribbean, and even Germany. And they were very, very interested in what we were doing here, from the rural to the urban, from farm again to table. How do you commerce, business, import, export? And so seeing that firsthand of other nations, including some that are struggling, way more than we will ever, have to experience from an economic and food security standpoint. And they were just enamored and wanting to know more and learn more. And so I think just for folks to know that, the thinking behind this campus has been transformational, has been very well thought through. And we really need as many people as champions as possible to just help us fulfill that vision and keep us honest throughout it, so that we make sure the community has an opportunity to take advantage of it here locally, and then all the way throughout the state. Again, back to the rural communities, making sure that there's a tie-in, the Western Slope, Eastern Slope, wherever it may be. And so it's amazing to be part of it. And it's a good story.
Thank you so much. If there's nothing else you want to share, then thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate it. Yeah,
absolutely. Jenna, you're on. If I forgot anything, because she knows I will ramble on for days on this stuff, as I feel like while my professional experiences is several decades, I feel like this is stuff I've been thinking about and talking about for my whole life. So if you didn't have anything, Jenna, to nudge me on in terms of talking about, that's my story.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, and have a very nice Friday afternoon. Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.